All right, so chapter 12 begins the prepositions. And I think prepositions are really cool because to me, it really helps in trying to translate, because I can see the standalone preposition, and to some degree, I kind of know what I'm working with. So obviously we've got our vocabulary here. I trust that you've looked through all of those. On this next page, we have some compound or composition verbs where we've got a preposition tacked onto a verb. And in part 74, this is kind of where the prepositions kind of make translating a little bit more easy. But in some cases, depending on what case your phrase is in, it might change the meaning of the preposition. So here we have an example of para. And when it's in the locative or the ablative or the accusative, it might have a slightly different meaning. And he goes through these here, and when we do the homework for this chapter, you might want to have to reference the section of the text. Part A tells us that prepositions are used with certain cases. Note that the ones that are missing is the nominative case, the dative case, and the vocative case. Now, part B, I think, is something pretty significant because, now remember, this text is 100 years old, and some of the newer modern grammars don't really delineate very well between the dative, locative, or instrumental. They're just kind of categorized in the group as being dative because the form of the word is the same. But when it comes to the prepositions, these words have different functions, and even though the form looks the same between, say, the dative or the locative, the function is completely different. And this is something that has tripped me up in my first year study. I was using a modern grammar, and things just were not really making sense to me. And to me, the 8-case system is far superior. It gives new light on meaning when you're coming to try to read this text. And again, part B, the dative is not used with any of the prepositions, and of course there's one exception with the biblical address there. Now, as opposed to a preposition being paired with a phrase or, something in the locative, for example, you can also pair a preposition with a verb. In number 75, commonly two uses when you pair a preposition with a verb could be merely local, or can intensify or complete the idea of the verb. And then we've got some examples. Now here in 76, we're talking about the spelling and how sometimes letters are going to drop off depending on if we put the verb in a different tense, like from the present to the imperfect. There's going to be a little bit change in spelling. And so this, I think, is pretty important. And when you're trying to recognize verbs in the imperfect, knowing that that letter is dropped off when you're combining the preposition with a verb is very helpful. And you will understand why some of these letters have dropped, and you'll be able to recognize the verb as being in the imperfect because of that change. One of the examples we have is para lambanan. And you can see how that alpha has just dropped. And then the verb was put into the imperfect, so that epsilon was added. And also the ending, you know that that verb is in the imperfect. And again, some exceptions. In part A, the prepositions peri and pra, they do not drop the final vowel. There you have it.